What is the NBA's salary cap? Well, it's a complex web of financial restrictions, potential penalties, and ever-evolving calculations with which all 30 teams must comply. But in its simplest terms, the salary cap places a limit on how much each team is allowed to spend on player salaries each season. It's a measure intended both to control costs for clubs and ensure a degree of parity within the league by preventing a small number of teams stockpiling the best players. Without such spending restrictions, teams with the richest owners, or the clubs based in the most attractive locations, could, in theory, sign as many of the league's best players as they were willing to pay for. Instead, NBA teams are incentivized to construct a roster of players whose total yearly contract value comes in under the cap, thus ensuring a more even distribution of the game's top stars. This forces the owners and general managers around the league to get creative with their squad-building efforts. They must decide, for instance, whether a title pursuit is best served by signing 2 or 3 high-priced superstars and then filling out the rest of the roster with rookies or aging veterans on cheaper deals, like the Miami Heat team that won 2 championships with LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh as their big 3. Or by fostering greater depth, perhaps surrounding one primary star with multiple high-level contributors. The NBA first introduced a salary cap in the mid-1940s, but the idea was abandoned after just one season. The league operated without any restrictions on salary spending for the next 4 decades, before the cap was reinstated for the 1984-85 season to encourage competitive parity. That first season under the new salary cap enabled clubs to spend up to $3.6 million on player salaries. For the 2022-23 season, the cap was set at $123.665 million. Now, that 34-fold increase over the course of the last 3 decades is due to how the salary cap for each season is calculated. The level at which the cap is set is worked out as a proportion of the average revenue, or more specifically, what is termed as the basketball-related income of the 30 clubs. As revenues around the league have skyrocketed since the cap was first introduced, so too has the figure teams are permitted to spend on player salaries. How much of that revenue is apportioned to salary spending is determined by the NBA's collective bargaining agreement, the contract negotiated and agreed upon periodically by the league and the players' union. Now, the collective bargaining agreement also determines rules around player contracts, trades, and the draft. In its most recent iteration, ratified in 2016, it was agreed that players should be guaranteed between 49 and 51% of the league's basketball-related income, with the salary cap accounting for 44.74%. The advent of a sudden influx of revenue into the league can see the cap limit spike, enabling teams to spend vastly more than the previous season. Now, that's what happened in 2016, when a bumper new TV rights deal made it possible for the Golden State Warriors to sign free agent superstar Kevin Durant. Likewise, a period of downturn could see the cap shrink and force teams to tighten their belts. Salary caps are common within top-level US sports. The NBA's salary cap, though, is different to most, and as such, it can be a bit more complex. The NFL, for example, uses what's referred to as a hard salary cap. This means that there is a set, immovable figure under which every team's wage bill must fit every season. The NBA, on the other hand, employs a so-called soft cap. The cap figure is determined each season, but it's less rigid. For those willing to pay an additional premium to do so, there are a set of loopholes or exceptions that enable the most ambitious clubs to exceed the cap in pursuit of glory. Some, such as the Larry Bird exception, named after the Boston Celtics legend and 3-time MVP, are intended as measures to limit player movement around the league and encourage continuity. The Bird exception allows teams to exceed their cap in order to re-sign their own players, who are due to enter free agency. The disabled player exception is a provision allowing clubs to sign a replacement when one of their players is ruled out for an extended period through illness or injury. Other exceptions, such as the mid-level salary exception and the biannual exception, allow teams to bolster their roster depth with players signed on mid to low-level salaries. Now, clubs are under no obligation to use any of these exceptions to exceed the salary cap, or indeed spend up to the cap figure on their total player salaries. It is stipulated only that all teams must at least hit the minimum allowable spend of 90% of the cap. But most teams exceed the cap to some degree. and those who wish to go above and beyond in their efforts to challenge for a title become liable to pay a luxury tax. How much luxury tax a team is levied with relates directly to how much they exceed the salary cap by. Just as the cap level is determined each year as a percentage of revenue, so too is the threshold at which clubs exceeding the cap will be liable for the tax. Once their wage spending tips over the luxury tax line, they are charged for every additional dollar spent. It begins with a charge of $1.75 for every dollar over the threshold, but the tiered system can see teams paying as much as $4.75 if they trigger the highest tier. And there are additional financial penalties for teams who incur a luxury tax bill in consecutive seasons. The Golden State Warriors are a team notoriously willing to spend big in pursuit of winning. When Steph Curry and co led them to a championship in 2022, their combined bill for total player salaries and luxury tax came in at a whopping $354 million. Their $107.3 million tax bill set an NBA record. So, the NBA salary cap is as malleable as it is fluid. It disincentivizes overspending rather than strictly prohibiting it. Now, it might still be possible for NBA teams to buy success, but it requires the deepest of pockets to do so.